Okay, this is Jerry again from US Camera, and today I was going to show you the tester that we use a lot here because it's just small and has a very small footprint. And I just point out some things about the test bench and what's really here. You don't see any test lenses. I don't keep the test lenses here. I have too many of them and they're on a different shelf. And this is just some really camera debris, laughingly, at the test bench. On the left side's an N6006 I was testing earlier. FTBs on top of the light box. There's a couple lenses there, a Nikon and a Minolta it looks like. And then if we pan over here, we can see a couple cameras in the optical bench. This is a Richter collimator for testing lenses resolution. And then there's a power supply just to the left of that on the top of a brick over there to adjust the brightness of the power supply, the light. Anyway, back to the tester. Pardon me. I did another video using the tester and really didn't explain the tester itself per se. So I thought I'd do that. You can see the other video, and I'm trying to get better at talking to an audience I can't see. That's just different for me. But anyway, what I have here is the CE240 360 Duplex tester made by Spectron instruments. And so we'll fire this up and I'll tell you what's going on here into a little bit more detail on the tester alone without really testing a camera. Now, I'm going to test a lot of cameras over time if you want. We have many film cameras in my collection, and I can test a lot of instruments or cameras that I have here. If somebody shows an interest and you want to see that, just let me know. But anyway, so I'm going to go right to starting to talk about this. The most important thing on the tester is the probe. In another video I do talk about the probe. But since we're just doing the tester, I'll go ahead and talk about it again. It's a 3-sensor probe. And there's a sensor here to check the first opening curtain, and then a sensor there to test the closing curtain. And then the center sensor that's kind of a bluish green, that's an exposure sensor, also tests the shutter speed also. So if you're doing a leaf shutter, we have a format sensor for that, or you can use this over the light source and check pretty much any type of shutter. And so with that in mind, I'm going to fire this up, and so set this over here. And so then I'm going to just turn the tester on and talk about things I probably didn't talk about before. Plus all the debris here from the cameras, from testing them. On top of the tester is a box of top covers and different pieces of cameras that we need to calibrate them. For instance, there's an A1 cover so that I can get to access to the adjustments. Sometimes the cells are so sensitive, if we don't have a cover over the top of the camera, you really don't get an accurate adjustment and an accurate reading. In the same way for the AE1s. We took this AE1 and we cut off the side there at the top, in the top cover, opened it up so that we can get to the adjustments for that. Several cameras need them. Here's the X370 probably, right? And there's just all kinds of covers in there that we keep handy because we may need them doing a calibration. But not doing a calibration here, we really don't need that. Okay, so come back over here. I'll just point out some of the features of the tester. I'm going to grab a pair of tweezers. I like pointing at something with a pair of tweezers than anything else, just because I use them all the time. Anyway, the tester is reading, up here is the shutter speed. And it's just clocking now because nothing's seeing the sensor, but it reads milliseconds. So right now the tester is dialed up where you're seeing 1.00. So that would read, if you were reading a second, it would be 1 second, 0.00 milliseconds. If we're testing a shutter in like a thousandth of a second, we're not even interested at all in the decimal point being here. We're interested in the decimal point being there. And so we'll see as we test a camera on it, the center sensor will show what the shutter speed is, and the opening and closing curtain are the most important thing to see how the camera is exposing over the width of the focal plane. And so it needs to be really even, or else you'll see a gradient exposure as the shutter goes across the aperture. And sometimes it caps, which means it closes the opening of the aperture in the camera before it gets to the end of the travel. And that's an adjustment too. But I'll show you at some point in time how critical the adjustments are in the shutters. You can never turn a shutter adjustment screw for a focal plane shutter, either vertical or horizontal travel, without having a test equipment. A tiny tweak can make that shutter at the upper end speeds just crazy faster than you ever believed. So anyway, moving on, this is the shutter part of it, as I said, and so we can adjust this test part of it here to see exactly what we want to see. Maybe open and close will be different, and the tester has several, like first curtain travel time on this only, and we can see what that is. Second curtain travel time only also, where we can read open to center, center to close, and open to close. And so we can see how well the shutter is performing at 3 different places on the focal plane with the sensor. This also checks flash sync if you want to see that. You can see the delay. Don't do that so much. Generally speaking, X sync is what's most common now. I'm trying to figure out a way to show people how to check flash sync on their camera with a flash, and I'll figure that out, but you can't really do it with an iPhone. But in any event, back to the shutter speed adjustments, and then you've got this, these are all sync displays of time. So back to just a standard shutter adjustment right here. Also, this tester will test Super 8 movie cameras. And if you have the probe for that, which I do, you can test them and you can read 8 frames per second on those and exposure. So the bottom part of this tester is the exposure system itself. And so let me just zoom in on this just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better of exactly what this is. I'm going to move the camera here just a tiny bit. As we do this more and more, I'll probably get a better camera to do this. I'd really like somebody to film it, honestly. But in any event, this right here is reading exposure. And you can bring up different ASAs. There are 3 choices here. T-stops is for transmission testing. So if you look at the scale here, the lower part of the scale is aperture numbers, and that's if you're using T-stop transmission checks. You use the probe in the back, you set the lens opening to what you're wanting to test to see if it was shooting 2.8 or f5.6. Brightest light value you have, f6, which is an EV of 15. You fire shutter off, a medium shutter speed, 30th, 60th of a second. It'll give you a really good positive test on the aperture setting. And then they'll be displayed here depending on exactly what aperture you selected itself. And then the top part of this is the exposure accuracy. And since, exposure and T-stops transmission of apertures are basically the same thing, we're reading how much light's there. So moving on to that, the top of it is showing exposure value and error. If the needle swings to the dead zero on this tester, it will that's a perfect exposure, and it's broken down into tenths of a stop. Now, sounds like a lot, it's not. Remember, film tolerance is 15% or so. They never did get it where it was dead accurate like test equipment or digital. So this will show you how it's exposing at 3 different light values. And so you also have a range of 2.5 stops under or over. And it's just there as a reference, because if you got something that's squirrely or acting really wild, it could have a aperture failure. You set a high light value and you're testing a 1/25th of a second on auto, aperture preferred auto, and so you're expecting the lens to drop down to 16. If it malfunctions, this needle will swing all the way over here to minus 2.5 stops over, because all of a sudden the aperture didn't stop down. That's how you can evaluate some pieces of equipment and using an instrument like this. You should never try to adjust anything in a camera except an analog meter. You can get away with that by testing and then testing with film and then making adjustment and testing again. but it's so much easier to have a piece of equipment that you can test, make an adjustment, and test again. So the next thing, and the last thing I'll show you here really is what these lights mean here. This means the tester is powered up. This green light will also come up. This red light's two functions. It's green and red. It will stay red as if you are over, I think it's 3/4 of a stop, it'll go red. And it'll tell you that you're over out of tolerance. Like right now we're shooting, basically the probe picked up light, and it said that light I just showed it was 2 stops over for ASA 100, but it doesn't know anything. It doesn't really know any type of shutter data there because it was it's not getting a clean image of light off and on. So, but in any event, it will be green. Let's see if I can get it to do it. It'll go green right there. It'll be green right here if we're about 3/4 over or 3/4 under. Still not good. You really want a camera to run dead on the money. And most of them will go dead on the money if you really have it set up right, shutter speed and accuracy and the aperture control, everything is good. So the other thing here is right here. This will tell you if the shutter tripped across. And you're looking for that. You use a tester to look to make sure that everything really is functioning. If you got a malfunction, something's malfunctioning, you're trying to determine what that malfunction is with the equipment. But like this, see, if we blink it like that, it's told me that we just made an exposure. It almost gave me a green one, so maybe you get that. Yeah, there we go. I guess it's about half a stop, and then it went green. See, and we got a stop, an exposure right there of about 3/4 or 3/10 of a stop over, which should be a good print film adjustment for a camera, but if you couldn't get it dead on. So that's what it is with the reading of the instrument here. So when you fire up the the light box, it just is a powerful light source. That's all that is. And the light source right there is a full sunlit day at noon. F16, 1/25 of a second, sun's overhead. And that's the brightest setting that most cameras need. If you are wanting to go higher, have another instrument that goes to EVA 18, we've never found a need for it. I mean, it's nice that we can check them there if somebody's wanting to, shoot everything at a 4,000th of a second or 8,000th on a film camera. We may use that just to confirm, but this will show us what we need to see anyway to confirm that the 4,000 is accurate. And so it's linear, cameras are linear. So anyway, so EVA 15 is a 1/25 at f16. We slide this first baffle over, it drops by 2 stops. So we're at a 1/25 now at f8. And so you can drop it 2 more stops, and then you can go to a 1/25 at f4. And then you can go anywhere in between that, 1/25. You can change the shutter speed and aperture combination, especially on program cameras. You can run them and check in full auto. The camera is controlling the shutter speed and aperture, and you can see exactly what it's doing on the test equipment and varying the light value. So that's really all I can tell you about the equipment. And like I said earlier, we'll be glad to show you equipment that we're testing if you have a particular model that you want to see how they perform. And we'll be glad to do that. So look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you enjoy the information I provided to you about the Spectron CE240 360 Duplex test system. And thanks very much. Look forward to hearing from you.